As always, we are extremely happy to welcome our speaker today, Pravrajika Gitaprana from the Ridgeley Retreat. I speak, I think, on behalf of so many people here that we're always so happy to have her. Mataji is the minister in residence at the historical Vivekananda Retreat, Ridgeley, dedicated to preserving and continuing the universal teachings of Swami Vivekananda. Since 2004, Mataji has presided over the 82-acre retreat, which offers opportunities for devotees to deepen their personal spiritual practice in a beautiful, quiet, and peaceful atmosphere. And I have to say, if none of you have been there, you really should go. It's wonderful. Prior to taking charge of Ridgeley, Pravrajika Gitaprana was a monastic at the Vedanta Society of Southern California under the leadership of revered Swami Swahanandaji. She's a very popular speaker within the Vedanta family, also very active in the interfaith community. The subject of her talk today is hiding in plain sight. Mataji, welcome again.
Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. All right, you made it dark, so I can't actually see what's happening. Are you ready? Yes. Because this is Memorial Day weekend, and ordinarily everybody uses that weekend to play, maybe escaping the city and whatever. And since you obviously have all sacrificed your playtime to come here and listen to a boring talk, that we're going to play. So, you may be thinking, oh no, what's she gonna do? Or you may be trying to outthink me and think, all right, watch your mind. This is, in order to play the game here, there has to be a watcher on your thoughts. So you have a twofold task for this morning. You have actually listening, if you can, or if you want to. And then you have the task of being the witness to what you might be thinking at the time. Because this is not going to be entirely conventional talk, as you can probably guess. And I don't actually like much conventional talks. And since I know you all pretty well, I am not doing a formal talk format today. It might not work so well for people who listen to it later on Zoom or online or whatever, because part of the experience here is that you don't have as many distractions as if you would do if you watched it on YouTube later, where there might be kids or furry friends who like to get in your face when you're watching something, and these are distractions. Okay. So the way I was thinking of the title of my talk originally was Hidden in Plain Sight. And I wasn't actually thinking about it till a couple of weeks ago. And I thought, oh, I better start planning this talk early in the morning before I went in the shrine. And so it was kind of in the back of my mind. I'm walking, set one foot of the shrine, and into my head pops, not hidden. So the actual title of my talk, if there's a title at all, is Not Hidden in Plain Sight. Do you get it? Or is your mind thinking, what is she talking about? What does she mean, not hidden in plain sight? How could that possibly be? It's a paradox, that kind of thing. What is your mind doing? I'm asking you. You don't have to tell me, obviously, but are you confused? Is there like an intuitive level that understands when I say not hidden in plain sight, it means it, whatever it is in plain sight. So maybe we're thinking of all the reasons why that can't possibly be, and we're going to stand up and say, no, no, no. But the point here is not so much what our intellectual mind is thinking, but how we notice what it is thinking. And also, there's a deeper level. There's a much deeper intuitive level, and most of spiritual life takes place on those levels. If you cannot stand it, and you have to know what this talk is about, I will say this talk is about Pravriti sadhana. And what I mean by that is the spiritual practice. Pravriti means the towards path, or the path of saying iti, this, rather than neti, not this. And we would say, if you want to use a meme, about covering everything with the divine, or seeing the divine dwelling within everything. So that's for your intellectual enjoyment. But in reality, we're going to try and perceive some of this today. And it may fall flat in the face. What you need is curiosity, and what you need is not to overanalyze or outthink me. That at Ridgeley, this happens all the time, because certain people have, and maybe you're one of them, have a thinking style, and I'm not criticizing it, but you might have a thinking style that if somebody says X, someone says this is X, your mind automatically starts thinking of all the possibilities when it's not X, right? Or if somebody says it's X, you automatically go, what? No, this is all accessed on a deeper level. So you need curiosity about your own mind. And actually, the Pravriti sadhana, the Pravriti path of being in the world, requires wonder and curiosity and awe. So first, I want to try this out with a little test. Since this is the Vedanta Society and we are all technically Vedantins, theoretically, let's take one of the Mahavakyas, great sayings, and that is, Aham Brahmasmi, Aham Brahman Asmi. I am Brahman. Think or don't think. What I am I talking about? What I? Is it somewhere else? So the reason I'm bringing this up is that I think if I had a criticism of the way we all talk in the scriptures or anything, I think that sometimes in the necessity of presenting a very high goal, which the scriptures must, it ends up discouraging just about everybody. That because we hear, oh yes, well, nirvikalpa samadhi, savikalpa samadhi, sahaja samadhi, these are all high things. We can't possibly, not in this life, maybe in 100,000 lives, like that. But let me ask you again, if you are that, saying something like, oh, how could I possibly do this, is ridiculous. And that's the cardinal saying of all forms of at least Advaitic philosophy. I am that. Does it mean Gitaprana? No, it means each and every one of us. It's not I will be that. It's not I was that and lost it. It's I am that right here, right now in the life that I have. So if I say, oh, wow, and we all get discouraged. And this is what I do for myself also. We all get discouraged and think, oh my God, I'm just going to waste my life fooling around. You think, okay, that kind of thinking is ridiculous ultimately. That when we are already that, to sit there and say, I can't do it, is actually crazy. Right? Would you agree? And so it should be empowering that if we feel discouraged, that ultimate Vedantic message should be at the base of every one of our sadhanas. I'm already that. I don't have to be so good that I earn it. I don't have to, for so many karma yoga brownie points, achieve it. Or whatever, jnana yoga, neti my way into it. Spiritual practice is definitely necessary, but I'm already that. I am Brahman. Now, not tomorrow. Not even in the next nanosecond. So, we're going to play with a little bit of Vinyamaya. I'm going to, again, I almost always give a talk and say this in it, that would you agree, if you consider it, virtually all of our experience is conceptually based. No exception. That even if we say emotions, in the Indian tradition, emotions are always connected to thinking or previous experience. So when I mean conceptually based, is even the notion we just used, I, not EYE, is a concept. Right? It's a concept that possibly the predilection for it came into this birth with us, but it was added on by our parents and society and our experiences. Would you agree? So the notion I that we experience, I am so-and-so, is a complete construct. Right? Now, but we're talking about the Pravrajika path. So we need to use the notion I that we have right here, right now on the spiritual path. Right? Not who I wish I was. I wish I was Ramakrishna and I could blah, 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 blah. Forget that. That we are that now. But the hitch of it is we don't perceive it. Or at least we think we don't perceive it. When in actuality, and Swami Vivekananda used to say this, everything we perceive, whether it's the chair, the podium, or the other people, is actually nothing but the divine. And we mistake it for being something other. So don't be discouraged. Don't get too involved in conceptual categories. That mind loves to put things in conceptual categories, and it begins with the concept I and not I. And in the kind of tradition that I'm actually kind of vaguely talking about, that's the Maya. That's where the, if you call it illusion, begins and ends. So I'll go into that a little bit more in a minute, but it begins there. And so the core of any spiritual practice, no matter what kind of spiritual practice you like or consider yourself, means on the Pravrajika path, we use it. But we must always keep at the base the Vedantic sayings, I am that already. So in case we manage to think that we can't possibly do it, or that, as some commentators way back when said, if we're not Brahmins or male or under 30 or whatever, we've already blown it. How could that possibly be? Right? How could it be if we are all that? And in the traditions of Advaita, which I'm about to talk about, it's not that we are part of that. Each one of us, as we perceive it, is the whole. And that we have to be comfortable in understanding that many of these teachings will seem contradictory or paradoxical to us. And on the Pravriti path, we have to be comfortable with not knowing, with contradictions and paradoxes, because life is never going to give us the answer. We can live our way into the experience, but we will never get the answer, just like Arjuna never actually got the answer from Sri Krishna. That Sri Krishna told him what kind of attitudes to contemplate. He told him what kind of spiritual practices to do, but he never said, this is the answer. So we need curiosity, we need wonder, we need a willingness not to collapse and cling to certain concepts. Oh, I am a bhakta, so I don't need to be listening to this. Well, you do. And because you will use that, as I will say later, on your spiritual path. I've heard this a million times before. Fine, don't listen, I don't mind. But we need to be willing to transcend that kind of thinking. That's surface level thinking. There's another whole witness self that will hear this as well. And if we quit messing around with that surface level kind of analytical thinking, some intuition, for lack of a better word, some intuitional understanding, which might be called in a conceptual framework higher buddhi, may assert itself. But as long as we're analyzing, and overanalyzing, we need that, but we also need this other deeper kind of intuitional understanding. And for some of the things that I'm going to suggest that we do, you can't overanalyze it or it won't work. All right, so quite obviously, probably to most of you, I've been talking about the Advaitic path, right? You would agree? But there are many kinds of Advaita. And Advaita literally means the quality of being not to. So, not called ekatva, which means unity or oneness. So, in a little bit of conceptual fiddling around, because you don't want to assign something that's without qualities a quality to it, and ekatva, oneness, is a quality. And so that's the kind of thing I want to avoid doing here, but could you think, if it means not to, could you think of another way to translate that? The Advaita of the Shakta world, which is only a Pravriti Marga, mostly, meaning the world let's say, Kashmir Shaivism and the Tantrika world, and part of what Sri Ramakrishna, a big part of what Sri Ramakrishna taught as well. The Advaita of the Shakta world sometimes translate this differently. Can you think of why? Can you think of another translation? It means not to. Come on, you can think of it. No, because you're so used to Advaita meaning that. The Shakta world will sometimes translate that to mean more than two or not only two, because it can mean that. In other words, infinite. And therein lies the main difference between Kevala Advaita of Shankara, and the Advaita of the Shakta world. The Advaita of the Shakta world is the idea of the Upanishads is the concept Brahman, which, by the way, is not a thing, is both transcendent and immanent. So Shankaracharya will focus mostly, but not entirely, on the transcendent aspect. The philosophers of Kashmir Shaivism and the Tantric world will focus on the immanent aspect, meaning both in the world and out of it, to be glib. So the Shakta world says how can I say this? I'm being really, there's huge nuances and many differences. When I say the Shakti world, I'm throwing together like a huge amount of teachings that don't necessarily match each other. It's like throwing all Indian traditions into one thing and calling it Hinduism. You know, there's so many different philosophical and religious traditions in India. And even in so-called Hinduism, there's so many lineages. And so that's what I'm kind of doing when I say Shakti world. The Shakti world says, well, the divine, which sometimes they call Brahman, sometimes they call Shiva, is unlimited. Okay, so far so good. And therefore, to say that it doesn't do something is to limit it. Brahman never changes. That's limiting, at least. Now remember, now we're fiddling around with our analytical external concepts, but we aren't for long. They say, what? You're saying that it's limitless, without limit, but then again, you're limiting that by saying that it never changes. It has infinite, and the word in Sanskrit is called swatantriya, freedom, to make a long, nuanced definition into one word. So swatantriya means, actually the word tantra and the word Brahman both have similarities. They both mean vast and expanded. And so Tantra and Tantriya both mean, well, one meaning of Tantra is loom, meaning ever being woven. But another word of it is vastly expanding, always expanding. And Svatantriya is the word that is used to describe the power of the one infinite, undivided, to become infinitely divided. And there is nothing, we would glibly say, there is nothing that it cannot do. So, yes, it changes. Yes, it transforms. But it's beyond our mind cannot even begin to conceive of the infinity of it. So Indian scriptures are usually pretty good at building minds towards infinity by using outrageously huge numbers and those kinds of things. But here we're going to do something a little bit different. So that divine, now you can take any path you want here. You don't have to say, well, I'm not an Advaitin, blah, 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 blah. Here we're just listening and maybe examining our own mind. That Svatantriya, that freedom, is the freedom to infinitely become. So, I know I've said it here before because I'm like a broken record here. Originally it was said by Swami Vivekananda, infinite is not a huge number. So it doesn't relate to a number at all. It means truly beyond all numeration. So blow your mind out of the number realm. And imagine that means that what we would say, every single possible moment of being and becoming exists somewhere, somewhen, right? Which I once had when I was a kid. I had a kind of a predilection for doing what I'm trying to get people to do now, which is, even when I was very small, to kind of contemplate the nature of reality and what if it's more than what we actually see. Now, I couldn't have put it into words when I was 7, but I know that's what I was doing. And in my 7-year-old way, I would like to lie on the sofa in our living room and look up at the ceiling and imagine, what if the ceiling was the floor? How would we all live then? That we would have to walk over we would be stepping over everything, and the doors would be up to and imagine it being all upside down, and us living in it, kind of like Alice in Wonderland, living in an upside down world. All right? I used to love to do that kind of thing, shove my mind right out to the boundary. And one time when I was doing that, and I can tell you this because I don't consider this a spiritual experience at all. One time when I was doing that, and I think I might have been not more than 7, that suddenly, it may have been that my mother came through like a open doorway while I was kind of staring upwards. And all of a sudden, for a split second, my mind, I would say now, dropped. And I realized that that very action, first of me perceiving my mother coming through the door and also my mother coming through the door, was in actuality multiplied infinitely. And you know what my reaction was? Panic. Like Arjuna, seeing the divine form, not that I was. I absolutely panicked for a moment, and then it snapped back. And I thought, oh my gosh, you mean means that exact action and me seeing that exact action happens infinitely over and over and over again. And yes, that's what I mean by infinite. And one of the reasons why I became such a devotee of Swami Vivekananda when I was maybe 13, I read, I can't remember which little talk of Swami Vivekananda's it was, but he says to his audience, maybe I've been standing up here infinite times before and talking to you infinitely times. And I said to myself, he knows. So this is what I mean by infinite, that our language is going to naturally narrow down for our own consuming that something that we can understand. We have to remember that we mean infinite here, that infinite possibilities happening, infinite worlds, infinite possibilities, like if you may be familiar with the Yoga Vasishtha Ramayana, even universes being born inside of rocks. That if you're familiar with the cutting edge of theoretical physicists, they are out there thinking like this as well, some of them. That Schrodinger's cat and all that from the past, but even more so, that somewhere, someone infinitely expressed. And that's the kind of vast, which doesn't even go there, Brahman or Shakti talk about. So, we need to, no matter what our spiritual practice is, I would like to suggest that you make sure you expand your mind way out before you sit down and maybe contract it into whatever practice you have. That, because thou art that, O Shweta Ketu. Okay, so here we say, okay, so you say that Gitaprana, but here I am and there you are, and what? That's the beginning. This is from the place from where we work. This is where infinity begins. I'm trying to skip a lot of the philosophy here, but I feel like I'm me, and I'm separate from, say, Paula or Diane or anybody here. That's my day-to-day understanding, me. And that's why I said at the very beginning, I, who am you? Who are you? What is your I? That that's the basis for the whom of possibilities. And even every thought that I think could have many other possibilities, and every word that comes out of my mouth can be some other word, and there are infinite and infinite and infinite possibilities. Well, I can't live with that. My brain would blow. but I can live with me. And so the Maya begins here, and the Maya ends here. And so that's where the bulk of our spiritual practice needs to be, whatever it is. That not, as I said, pretending to be somebody else. That in watching our mind, seeing how our mind thinks. Now, I know for a fact from being at Ridgeley for 20 years that some people have no clue. That they just do something and they have no idea why they did it or what. That's not... that could be improved if we call ourselves a spiritual aspirant. Okay, so analogies. And again, I'm saying, please do not overthink this. Do not, like some people at Ridgeley do, nobody sitting here, however, try to outthink me, because it won't work. And say, you can try and outthink Shankara in that rope and snake analogy, but then you lose the whole point. So, one of the words that the Kashmir, Shaivite, and Shakta world uses is abhasa, and it means reflection, mostly. So in this, I want to ask you, put yourself in front of your mirror. All right? In your mind. Put yourself in front of your mirror as best as you can. Stand there. And look at your reflection. Right? And if you make a face, your reflection makes a face. How do you know that's you? How? You will say, I just know. I mean, Gitaprana, how could you be so stupid as to even ask? Unless I have some kind of, I had a stroke or some kind of disability that has messed with my perceptive capabilities, I can stand in front of a mirror, and one thing I know, whether I like it or not, is that's me. I know it. I just know it. Nobody has to tell me, oh, look, that's you. Right? So get that feeling of, I know there. Right? Look in the mirror. You know it's you. And if somebody walks behind you, you know that's not you. But here, what you were going for is that just knowing. You don't have to analyze it. You don't have to think about it. Right? You just know it's you. Now, what if, and you know everything the reflection does, because you know it's you, right? Imagine making faces in the mirror, brushing your teeth, whatever. You know whatever move that reflection makes is you. You don't need to tell yourself, oh, the reflection is now brushing its teeth, blah, 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 right? You just know everything the reflection does. Why? Because you are that reflection in some sense. Without you, that reflection doesn't exist, right? So the critical thing here is you know it. Because in this philosophy, where the one has become all this, we are all the reflection. Only, and the avidya of it, the maya of it, is that we think somehow we have our own life. That somehow we're the reflection doing our own thing, are we? In this analogy, can your reflection, if your reflection suddenly takes off in the mirror and starts doing something, you're going to be a little bit worried. Like maybe you took some weird drug by mistake. That that, so the reflection in this, we are all the reflection, right? And the one, for sake of whatever, let's call it the mother, just because that's kind of my mental stance. The subject is the mother, is the one who has, let's say, divided through this freedom of infinite being, has divided as if, but not in actual reality, herself into you and I, meaning her I and the I of the reflection. And in this case, in order for infinite possibilities to, boom, infinitely manifest, the reflection has to believe that it's unique. But in reality, who is looking in the mirror here? In fact, who is the mirror? Who is the subject? She is the subject. She is the reflection, and she is the mirror, and she is the act of looking. So, and here's where you can't overthink me, because this is an analogy. She knows everything about the reflection. All right? We say, how could she possibly? But yes, just as we know everything about what we look at in the mirror, although we may be imposing some emotional baggage onto it, like, oh, I'm getting old. Who is getting old? But in the case of this analogy, she knows she is the reflection, in the same way that we know we are our own reflection. It doesn't take any kind of extra anything for us to know our reflection, right? So in this case, she infinitely knows because she is the reflection. And when she looks in the mirror of the world she herself emanated, she is each and every infinite thing, here and now. Which, of course, is another part of the Maya. We experience it strung out in time and space. But she perceives it all just in the same ways that we don't perceive pieces of ourself in the mirror, right? We perceive the whole self, right? We don't, hopefully, we perceive the whole self. So in the same way, she, for the sake of using concepts, does not perceive pieces. She perceives the whole self in the mirror. And we think, how could that possibly be? I don't get it, I don't get it. No, we're supposed to intuit it. This is where spiritual life starts. We have to go beyond this conceptual box that we like to put things in. Because we do like to do this. Oh, we're talking about Advaita. No, we're talking about Vishishtadvaita. No, we're talking about path of love. No, we're talking about life. And we're talking specifically about spiritual life, but it doesn't have to be only that. So here we are her. Aham Brahmasmi, if you prefer the Vedantic term. Tatvamasi, thou art that. What that are we? In the Shakta world, she is you, deliberately. You've heard me say this before. It's not a mistake. It's not an illusion. She is infinitely becoming, and all of us are herself. She is looking at her own reflection deliberately. And just as we know the whole of ourselves in the mirror, she knows the whole of every one of us in every moment. So Sri Ramakrishna will say, God is nearer and dearer to you than your very own breath, because it's true. And we don't take that seriously, but sometimes. But I would like to suggest that we do. Also, if we take one step towards God, God takes 10 steps towards us. And also his saying, the wind of grace is always blowing, because we are that reflection that is nothing other than her. There can't be a time when grace is not available. And then immediately we will say, there's another analogy, and I'm going to start running out of time here, but I want to do it, I guess. The movies. Consider how us regular people go to the movies or watch a movie at home. We sit down and we're talking about a movie that actually captures our interest, right? Whoa. We sit down and we watch it, and it's a story that's playing itself out seemingly linearly, and it captures our mind and it captures our attention, and all other, if it's a really good story, all other attentions may be lost, and our sense of time and space will be lost. But I spent 20 years in Hollywood, and this is also New York, so you may be aware of this too. You know that the making of the movies bear no resemblance to the end product, right? That, first of all, the way you watch a movie, even digitally, is made up of separate little nanobits strung together, right? And you may or may not know, but I think you probably do, that when they film a movie, when they make a film, they're not filming it in sequential order. That bits and pieces of the story are filmed separately and not in sequential order. And not only that, they don't say like a Broadway play, they don't run through a scene and then move to another one. They're saying the same 3-4 lines over and over and over again while their camera is put on one angle and the camera is put on another, and there's a close-up and there's a faraway shot, and they do it over and over and over again. And having seen them do this, they use the same words, but they don't necessarily say it in the same way twice. And in between this, there's a lot of consultation and a lot of go-between between the actors and whoever is directing and whoever is working the cameras. And it's a big, huge, collaborative effort. And grueling, too, sometimes, by the way. That the actors sometimes put in huge, long hours in very difficult circumstances, and may be the greatest devotees of the films of anyone. So an actor, and I know this because at the Hollywood Center, a long time ago, many, and maybe even now, many of the people still work for the entertainment industry. And as camera people, as cinematographers, as directors, as actors, and they have a very different way of looking at films. And occasionally I would be like a fly on the wall sitting there when a whole bunch of the devotees were talking to each other, and they all happened to be actors, because they understand that it's in pieces. So they have the vidya maya of that knowing, that the maya of the film that we all take as a story, they understand the pieces of it. And yet, they also, when they watch a film, they can watch it on 2 levels. They'll watch the story and they get totally enthralled. But they're also watching the cinematography. They know the other actors. They know their technique. They know where they went to school. They know who the director is and what the director's style is. They know all of this. And at another level of understanding. And so this is kind of where some of our pravriti practice needs to go. Yes, we're going to live the story. So Ramakrishna said the mother doesn't like people to get out of the game, or often referred to this life as a game. And the Nivritti path, which we could call the yogic path, which would include the Kevala Advaita of Shankara, or the Yoga Sutras, or the Jain tradition, would say, I'm out of here, that's the goal, right? I'm transcending this game. The Shaktas, whose primary spiritual practice is seeing her, or seeing the divine everywhere, are saying, okay, so I'm a pawn in the game, let's play. But we're going to play consciously. And instead, yes, I'm a pawn, I'm the mother's pawn, so be it. Let's play. Not, oh, poor me. So I'm a pawn in the game. So no, I'm the mother's reflection, and I'm going to play the game, and the game is not going to be necessarily what we would call fun. So how do we play the game? We should play the game each in our own way. That a lot of us were initiated by one teacher or another, and the teacher will give us, may have given us, or will give us spiritual instruction. So that should be the base part of our game. Even in the tantric tradition, puts more emphasis on the guru than just about any other tradition. So, so we play the game, and our guru is the one that's going to act as our advisor. But in the meantime, we have our life to live. You know, we might have kids, pets that jump up in front of our Zoom, because you know they do that, and things like that. The life we have, maybe like Gitaprana, our knees are going out, and we have Lyme disease too many times. So that's the life that I have. This I, which is nothing other than a reflection of the mother. One way, there are infinite ways, so don't try, and as the Bhagavad Gita says, it's better to imperfectly walk your own path. Is that how it says? Or is it perfectly? Than try and perfectly walk the path of another. We've got to start with this I, this permutation of the mother that's looking in the mirror saying, I am so-and-so. And say, yes, I am so-and-so, but I'm not what I think I am only. Aham Brahmasmi. Okay, so let's take a leaf from the Vaishnava tradition for one of the ways that we can practice this. Because we're deifying everything. And we can do this advaitically too. This is only one suggestion. We can deify, we can put like a concept or name to that divine, however we might. Call it Sri Ramakrishna, call it Sri Sri Shardama, call it Kali, call it Durga, call it Krishna. And yes, we can even personify that. Because who is personifying it? She's personifying it through us. And she is calling herself Krishna through us, calling it Ramakrishna or whatever. Do you see that? It doesn't matter. And what we should, the word that we're going to use here is a Sanskrit word, two words. One called bhavana, that also, another word, bhava, which you may have heard. It gets chopped off, the sound gets chopped off in Bengali and Hindi to become bhav. And in the Vaishnava tradition, it means we cultivate an ego of identification in a certain way. Instead of trying to throw off identification, which is a good way too, we're going to identify as something which might be so-called spiritual. So typically in the Vaishnava tradition, there's the moods, the bhavas, Sakhi bhava, Dasya bhava, like that. So being Dasya bhava, being a servant of the divine. Sakhi bhava, being a friend of the divine. Sri Ramakrishna practiced Matri bhava. He was a child of the mother. And so this is a way that we can take our deluded sense of self and pin it to so using Vidya Maya, the Maya of knowledge, to overcome this unknowing that we have, we start feeding in the opposite. And we can do that anyway. We can cultivate, I am the servant of the mother or of God. I am the child of Sri Ramakrishna. I am, and as we know, Sri Sharda Devi used to tell people, I am your mother, your real mother. And we can cultivate that, but we should seriously cultivate it. That it's not something, we would have to throw our whole heart and mind into it. And in that way, when we start, we pick a bhava, one that, and it may change as our spiritual life progresses, but say we pick one, I'm a child of the mother. At the very beginning, it may seem fake. Like, oh, this is ridiculous. This is so stupid. But what is that meme, fake it till you make it? That we fake it. It may seem fake at the beginning because it's going to be unfamiliar to our conceptual mind that loves things that we understand. And just cultivate slowly in the way that's available to us. So one way that's available to us is we take the life we have and feed that mood, that bhava that we're trying to cultivate into it. So say, for instance, there's one sister, Ridgeley has an Ask the Sisters Zoom class every Sunday evening, not today, and where people ask questions and whatever sisters happen to be available answer. And often practical things come up. So one sister was saying, okay, yeah, the sisters consistently say, yes, traditional practice, fine, wonderful, but you've got to do more than that. You have to spiritualize your life. So take little things and spiritualize them. Put your mood into it. If I am a child of the mother, if I get up in the morning and like Gitaprana, the first thing I do is go straight for my cup of coffee, have the cup of coffee with a mother. Or more like Gitaprana, starts thinking, well, the mother through Gitaprana, who calls herself Gitaprana, is actually having coffee herself, and Gitaprana has nothing to do. But anyway, like that. However you like to do it. Have coffee, have that time. I'm having my tea with God, however you're going to say it. And another thing that that I really like, and it seemed odd when I first started it, but now I would not do it, is, and I heard it from Swami Vivekananda years ago, cultivate, we say, oh, I can't meditate, my mind is on. But first, start with, find a place in your house, and it doesn't have to be like a maxed out shrine, like some people have. It can just be a little tiny corner. Make that your place to be with the divine. Now, yes, you already are that, but who cares? We're cultivating a bhava. So be with the divine. And the idea to cultivate is, I get to do this. Think about this, that in the world of infinite, truly infinite possibilities, here I am, that since we're at the Vedanta Society, it belongs to the Ramakrishna mission, et cetera, somehow this divine Ramakrishna arranged it. And here I am, the reflection, finding myself in this super privileged position that I want to and can and have heard about such an amazing teacher. And that amazing teacher has more or less grabbed me and put me where I am. Isn't that really almost miraculous, given the fact that there are infinite possibilities? And that kind of gratitude is one thing that we need to be cultivating. That this is one thing that I've noticed about the sadhus, who I think either have had a huge amount of realization or some, is they all are like almost sometimes stupefied by gratitude. And just like speechless. Say, for instance, Swami Swahananda would never talk about his guru, Swami Vivekananda. Why? Because he was speechless. So, and he wouldn't. That's the kind of thing he wouldn't share. But think about that. Think about it. Gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. Not just some happy, happy gratitude for my socks kind of thing. Yes, that's good. But amazing this in the world of infinite possibilities. And I mean, we're here. We can listen. We can think. We are living, we have a place like the Vedanta Society. We live in a city like New York that's really affluent. We, even though there's obviously not the certain level, not uniformly, we live in a country that's not currently being bombed or suffering from famines or diseases or, like in so many parts of the world. We live in a country where we still have some kind of freedom to think. And there's no spiritual police on top of us. And so think of that. But mostly think, oh my gosh, the fact that, if you want to call it the mother, or call it the Ramakrishna, call it whatever you want, got us. I mean, we can go haywire at any given point. And so think about that. And then go through our day. It will seem, then cultivate the attitude of, yes, I'm going to rush to be in my special shrine place. Even if I can't meditate at all, I get to be there. Oh my gosh. Even if my kids are playing loud music in the background or whatever it is, my boss is calling, whatever it is, that I get to be there, even if it's only for 5 minutes. So don't think about, well, if you don't meditate 6 hours a day, you're lost. How could that be? I'm not dissing that. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. If you have the capability and whatever to do that, by all means. But what I'm saying is our spiritual life is in every moment of our day because we are that every moment of our day. So she is being and becoming through our every moment. So thinking, okay, I might go in the shrine and sleep. Now, I don't actually meditate when everybody else does because I get up much, much earlier. But if I go in it's not really a good habit to get into sleep when you're trying to meditate. But if you sleep, okay, you're sleeping in the holy place. You're sleeping with the divine. But it's really not a good idea. And if you can't control your mind, then start talking. One thing about the Shakta tradition and the Vaishnava tradition too is they will start talking to, if there's a shrine and the divine is there in the form of some kind of a Murti, they'll go right up and start talking. And it may seem odd at first, but cultivating that habit and maybe our Advaitic mind is going to start overthinking, or maybe we don't want to even do this. This is fine too. But anything that seems kind of odd in the beginning can become a new kind of samskara, a new kind of habit. And that's what we're trying to do, is use these habits that actually she has trapped us to be the reflection in, to become aware that we are nothing other than her. And she is becoming simultaneously seeing all and becoming aware, in other words, being and becoming through all of us. As we move forward in our spiritual life, more being and becoming is flowing off us like some kind of science fiction movie. I think there was a Star Wars scene, the last set of Star Wars, where the girl Jedi, what was her name? I forget, is confronting herself in like a mirror, and she looks and an infinitely multiplied set of her off into the distance, and the goal for her is to not be confused. And that's a good analogy, I think, of how it is. But we got to use our who I am now And at the same time, because we're Vedantins, do also go a little bit on the neti-neti path as well. Because even if you're following this path, you do need viveka vichara. You need discrimination and you need awareness. In fact, there's not one single spiritual path where you don't need it. Because as we know, this sense of small I wants to exist on its own. Because we don't know anything else. We do. We know it in every moment, but we don't think so. So it will trip us up. So we cultivate those bhavas however we like. And then we try to bring whatever happens to us, and it's not all going to be good. And that's why the Shaktas will say, let's play. Meaning, okay, I know the mother is not always going to be like a good earthly mother, is not always going to be happy and kind to us, in the sense that if you're not a very good mother if you let the kids do whatever they want to do. You know, rush out into the street in front of a car? No way. And there's going to be some checking. And so we have to understand that. If you're going to play the game, you have to play the game. And actually, we have to anyway. But the game is not always a happy game. It's a game of being and becoming. And so we play it with virya. We play it with hopefully some kind of enthusiasm, even when the game is, we think, like Swami Vivekananda said, I could have made a better world than this. That it's not going to be understandable to us. That, remember, in this kind of philosophy, every possibility is manifest somewhere and somewhen. And we could say our, conceptually speaking, our karmic cause and effect existence currently has put us in such a place that the world appears like this. Right? But there are infinite worlds and there are infinite possibilities. So if I have confused you, that's probably good. If I have managed to make you enthusiastic about your own spiritual practice, that's really good. And also to remind people that ultimately all philosophies are constricted by concepts. And so I know you know this, but not only all philosophies, all experience is constricted by concepts. That's not necessarily a bad thing if we can use this with awareness. So ideally, we wouldn't say, I don't know why I did that. That a spiritual aspirant will go back if you acted off the cuff spontaneously and you didn't know why. A spiritual aspirant who practices viveka and vichara will be able to trace that back and know. A spiritual aspirant who won't do that is just plain not wanting to do that. That in the traditions of India, all emotional reactions have something to do with conceptual thinking. Possibly in the past, possibly childish conceptual thinking, meaning when we were children, but always. There's no split between mind, between body, mind, and emotions. It's all one. We are the reflection. It's all her. Thank you. I hope this was okay. Yeah, I can take some questions.
Yes, if you'd like to put your hand up and you have a question.
I'll tell you, it's all concepts. And if you don't, that's good too. Looks like no questions.
Pranam Mataji, thank you for the talk. In the spiritual life, one concept is everything is illusory, the world is illusory. And at the same time it said everything is God. So how do you reconcile these contradictory?
You can't. That they come from two different philosophical systems. And the world as we experience it is filled with paradoxes and contradictions. And one of the illusions, I guess you could say, is that we can somehow reconcile them. That we won't. So the world is an illusion, is the product, and again, we'd have to whole kind of ask Swami Sarvapriyananda. He can probably give a whole talk just on the word illusion. And it's a whole huge, in Sanskrit, there are many words that mean illusion, and they have many nuances. So illusion, we have this happen, ask the sisters a lot. Illusory is like a dumping category for a lot of different ideas. And the world is God. Once you go through all of them, or many of them, and unpack those nuances, you will see there's not actually a contradiction at the bottom. But, this is why I say, if you like to find the contradictions, this is good. We just had a retreat with Swami Vivekananda. Bill was there, he knows. And I had said to the Swami, young Swami Vivekananda, at the beginning, the Ridgeley audience, if you give them half a chance, will be very interactive. And he said, oh, good, let's do it that way. And I said, well, okay, but you have to understand that you won't be able to give your talk. That they'll pick it up and you'll go out into left field. And he said, I like that. And so we had the most energetic retreat we've ever had. Because we did have a few, originally people, we had some New York people, we had some Providence people, we had some Boston people, many of whom have been tutored by Swami Sarvapriyananda. And meaning they're going to ask that question. That's why I'm going on this. This Kevala Advaita, Swami Shankara's Advaita. If you know Swami Vivekananda, sometimes is no fan of Shankara. And has zeal. And he wanted to have a discussion. And he actually invited more of discussion. It was very lively. Let me tell you, nobody, I don't think, fell asleep. And just about everybody participated. And of the feedback that I got from the people who were there, they all loved it. But in the end, they said, this is a lovely intellectual exercise. But spiritual life goes deeper than that. So we were arguing. I wasn't. I was trying to keep my mouth shut. But the main argument was about this contradiction between in the world and illusory. And we won't solve it because it can't be solved intellectually. Okay, that's my half-baked answer. She has a question. Okay.
Aren't both those concepts?
Oh, yes.
Aren't both those concepts?
Oh, absolutely. That's why.
It doesn't really matter. At the end, on the spiritual path, you're going to have, not going to have, but
yeah.
There is a possibility of figuring out the bottom line as opposed to...
We won't ever figure it out. We will live our way into it.
Yes.
And it's debatable whether it's an us there that lives their way into it also. That Bill knows this too. We've had this constantly in our Sunday class. That which Gitaprana, which Diane, if we're going to use glib language, which one is going to realize God? If we're some product of many, many, many lives, which Diane, I'm asking you, which Gitaprana is going to realize God? No, there's a higher level that we already are. So the silly answer is all of them. But language is the way that we are snared. In other words, conceptualizing. But Language can also be part of the way we use to remove the snare, as long as we realize that, and we need it. We come to talks like this, we read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, which is language. We read, whatever we read, the Holy Scriptures, the whatever, that's language. It's conceptualized, but we're using it to go beyond it. But ultimately, when we get to the truth, whatever you call it, reality, call it God, call it the truth, call it Satchidananda, call it Brahman, call it the Mother, language doesn't go there. And so we will never understand it. And that's why some people even debate the word realize. But we will live our way into it. And then whatever that moment is, we don't know after that. That it will be, in other words, experiential. It will transcend any concepts or words, and maybe even our sense of self. In fact, definitely our sense of self as we know it. And maybe it's just a glimpse of that divine, that many, many people have had it. And then we snap back into our individual self, and we try immediately to start conceptualizing what just happened, right? And we might say, well, I don't know, but I wasn't me. Or whatever we say. It was blissful, it was wonderful, it was this, it was that. That's all bringing a non-conceptual experience back into our, and that's fine as long as we know that that's what we're doing. So Sri Ramakrishna famously said, people were always saying, well, what's it like, what's it like? And he would say, it's true. And think about what this kind of higher state of mind is like. And every time he tries, he snaps into samadhi. Gone. No Ramakrishna there, even though the body is there. Comes back, tries again, gone. Comes back, tries again. And finally he said, it's no good, the mother won't let me say. Meaning, words don't go there. And so we should be so lucky that just putting our mind there goes. But so we use words as tools just as we use our other spiritual practices. But ultimately we know that we will leave that behind, or it will leave us behind actually. We can't take words or conceptualizing into that higher state of mind. And we may come back and we may have a non-dual, let's just use words, we may have a non-dual experience. But non-duality will mean nothing to us there, if there's a there. Right? Do you see what I mean? Sat Chit Ananda. There will be existence. Being will be there. A kind of awareness, just like I was asking you to know, how do you know that you are the reflection in your mirror? That awareness will be there, but not necessarily the I that we know. And it will be blissful, ananda. But again, these are all concepts that we are relating to our human. So as the Upanishads say, it will be like 1,000 times that, but even that is concepts. It will be, and when we come back, maybe our mind will be permanently blown. No, really, truly, some people have these inadvertent experiences of the one, and their ego is shattered, and they may not actually, I've had a lot of people over the years that come, especially that come from other ashrams, other than the Vedanta societies, say, very few people though, have some kind of non-dual, I guess you could say, experience. Their ego is blown, and it takes them a very long time. They get committed actually to psychiatric wards, because they can't function without a sense of I. And they have to put it back. And that's one way. Or we just have a glimpse, and a glimpse is all it takes. that it may not be what we call ultimate liberation or whatever we want to call it, but a glimpse is all it takes to destroy all doubts and become, like Sri Ramakrishna says, the thieves who know that there's a treasure in the next room, that they spend the rest of their lives trying to get it or trying to get back to it. I know a lot of people like that who've had a glimpse. They know, but they might put it into any kind of words, but they also know that there's no I there, at least not as we understand it. And so we use concepts, but use them wisely. Oh, is that it?
Hello, I'm just curious, just out of curiosity, what, after spending some time, as I call it, as consciousness.
Your mic just flipped off.
Okay,
Anyway, just, yeah, I can hear you.
So after spending some time as consciousness, as I call it, I feel, what can you tell me about like the redirection of the energies, because, and the unblocking of the chakras?
Oh,
Because I've been feeling this weird energy like building up inside me and then going up, and then sometimes it hurts, sometimes it liberates itself.
well, I know what my own guru would say. Ignore it. Move forward. That, first of all, I mean, I'm not disagreeing, but I agree that because vital energy, prana, the body and the mind, and actually the world are all connected, that there are times when people feel that, say like surging of sentimental emotion, even in a spiritual sense, is a rising of prana. The Shakta world will practice Kundalini yoga, and deliberately, and say self-realization fellowship in other places, they have sadhanas for that. Sri Ramakrishna always said, don't pay attention to those things. First of all, because prana is the same thing as what is called chi in China and ki in Japan. And it's all about where your mind is. That's where your vital energy is also. And sometimes, yes, we have like a rushing up of whatever you want to call it. If, and I've heard this a zillion times, and I've seen it myself, if you don't know what you're doing, messing with the prana in your body like that is actually could seriously mess you up. In other words, moving chi for Tai Chi and Aikido, that's a very good practice. But deliberately doing it through breath control or these kinds of things, unless you have a teacher that can actually knows what they're doing and has been trained by a traditional yogi, it's best not to touch it. So Sri Ramakrishna and others will say, you know, yes, these things happen, but go forward, because spiritual realization has nothing to do with any of this. Likewise, things that are called siddhis, which the Tantrikas, I'm sorry to say, love to think about. Siddhis mean the powers, or say in the Yoga Sutras, there's the whole Vibhuti chapter, which is all about the different kinds of powers that one can access. Relatively easily. These are beginner things. It may seem miraculous to us, but this is, as spiritual aspirants, we're going beyond that. So if those things happen, we just don't. I know that once, years and years and years ago, I got all interested in prana. And so even though I know how to do a little bit of this kind of thing, because in the tantric pujas that the Vedanta societies use. We do a little bit of pranayama kind of thing when we're doing the puja. I decided to start practicing pranayama, not listening to anybody's instructions. And I started getting like, woo! I mean, it was awful. And I realized, oh gosh, this is not a good idea. And so I stopped, and it went away after a while. Our goal is, as Pramesh Maharaj, one of the Swamis of the old days, that everyone says was a realized soul, to use conceptual thinking, always said, go forward, go forward, go forward. And consequently, my guru, Swami Swahananda, who was basically his Upaguru, his main teacher, not his mantra giver teacher, was Pramesh Maharaj. It was his instruction too. Spiritual experience, who cares? Go forward. Go forward, go forward, go forward. That until you live your way into who you really are. So I'm going to chant, I think. It's already 20 after. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Jai Ma.